I'm just uh, I'm very concerned about the time frame we're really looking at here before any regulatory changes are going to be made that allow for small renovations, small scale development, which will lead the way in terms of economic recovery in this corridor, and then development of affordable and workforce housing. I mean, I feel like, are we kicking the can to say, well, we've had a lot of conflict over missing middle housing in residential neighborhoods, so we're just going to back off that and spend time on a citywide process. And similarly, we've had a lot of conflict over the building height incentive along the corridor in the center. So we're going to back off that and wait another 2 years for a citywide thing to get resolved. And in the meantime, um, you know, we're in an economic crisis right now. I mean, it's um, if we can't provide opportunities for small business owners and small property owners to expand, improve, or develop their properties in the next few years, it's going to be 1993 on Colfax all over again. We will have empty buildings, we will have vacant storefronts, we will have uh, stuff just sort of frozen. Because the other things, and I'll stop talking, guys, but there's a whole lot of other dynamics that aren't stopping. Property value increases, sales tax increases, minimum wage increases. They're looking at a climate change tax now. It's layer after layer after layer that makes it increasingly expensive to operate a business in this city. And if you're stuck in a space you can't afford and you can't expand it or subdivide it or share it or pop it up or whatever, you're gone.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll just respond briefly, Hillary, on the timing issue and the urgency. I think we hear you on that. I think the good news is that the citywide projects that I mentioned about the height zoning incentive for affordable housing, as well as the residential housing options in neighborhoods or the missing middle project, both of those are funded, and their funding has not been taken away due to the downturn. And the height incentive project, or the zoning incentive project, I should more precisely say, has already kicked off, and that is underway. And will be moving forward. The missing middle housing project will also be kicking off this year, later this year, probably late summer, early fall. And so because those projects are moving forward, yes, they are citywide projects, and so I hear you that that those are complicated. It may take a little longer than if we were just doing them in the the neighborhoods in East. But because there's just built-in process in terms of what needs to happen from a legal standpoint when you write regulations and you take them through the adoption process, I think that the time difference is not as big as you might think it would be if we were only doing them in the East area. It would still take us quite a bit of time to draft those regulations, get community input on them, and take them through the adoption process.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you. What about timing for the adaptive reuse pilot program? This is, we've been meeting now for 3 years and 4 days. And, my district and my stakeholders were very instrumental in identifying the problems in adaptive reuse, permitting and the process people were having to go through to change a use of a building on Colfax. I now have opportunity. I have some new investors wanting to improve, a corner spot in the Mayfair Town Center. And I can't, at this time, advise them to move forward because they're going to go straight into the lion's jaws unless there's some the process that we've identified and the ability to have some reasonableness in the requirements that building owners have to go through, those checks and balances aren't there. And it's, you know, all I can tell them is be prepared for a 1 to 2 year process and hire somebody and pay them every month for the next 2 years to fight, you know, the Public Works Department. And they're gonna walk away.
Yeah, we hear you there as well. And yeah, so the plan itself, we think, has very strong and clear recommendations around this problem, because we have heard this from quite a few people, and pardon my dogs, and we have that as a top priority in the plan. As you know, Hillary, we've also put in some supplemental funding into this concept through the grant, and we're going deeper into the weeds on the regulations than we normally would for a plan. And that white paper study will be helpful. And even though this adaptive reuse program idea does not yet have funding, I think because we'll have this extra level of research on the problems that we've highlighted in greater detail, we'll have the ability, both with the plan saying this is a top priority, that's adopted by council, and we have this white paper showing these are the specific code issues that we need to address. We'll be in a good position to maybe move quickly on addressing some of those. It might not be the full vision for an adaptive reuse program quickly, but there may be some code fixes that can happen in the near term that don't have a huge budget ask associated with them. So we're hopeful on that front.
And Kurt, you know, what's the timing for that? And is there a staff person assigned to it? I know you're all, you know, under a lot of pressure, and there are budgetary constraints hitting the city as well, but it's my job to sort of keep the pressure on here and to try to achieve the vision of this, you know, mixed use community Main Street that we've been talking about for 3 years.
We just received that white paper, I think late last week or early this week, for internal review. And once we've reviewed it internally, we'll share it with our external partners like you who have been involved in it.
That's great news. Thank you.
Kurt, this is Tracy. Real quick, will you be sharing that white paper with the rest of the steering committee?
Yeah, we can share that with anyone who needs it. It's pretty technical. It's basically just a code analysis of what barriers there are for reusing commercial buildings.
Great.
Small commercial buildings. But yeah, we can provide it to you as well.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Looks like Monica has her hand up.
Yeah, so I just had 2 points that I wanted to make, echoing Hillary's call for greater urgency. I noticed the slide now says it's going to Planning Board October. I thought we'd said September, so wanted understanding about why it just feels like there's constant delay. So want a little thoughts on that. And then also, I just wanted to clarify, as much as the Facts Partnership is a proponent of affordable housing, and I've worked in affordable housing now for a number of years, I also want to specify that the achieving community benefit wasn't our sole reason for wanting greater height on the corridor. And I think that's important for us as a steering committee and for the plan to recognize. We also believe that higher density is where is appropriate on transit corridors in order to achieve more walkability and more vibrant commercial corridors, as well as more sustainable development. We know that higher density housing is how we are going to address climate change. And so, I don't know, I don't think we should characterize it as, you know, we're trying to get it's a transaction with the private market. Yeah, and then I think you saw the Facts Partnership's letter of support, and we do want to push on the Quebec Yosemite, or sorry, the Quebec Colfax intersection. I still feel like that really is an appropriate place for higher density that is currently recommended. And then I have the same concerns that Hillary mentioned in terms of like saying we're just going to go with the citywide sort of missing middle policy. I thought that there was value in sort of leading but I recognize the pushback you all have been receiving. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Monica. On the timing issue, you're right. I mean, that's kind of been the story of this process, right? We were initially hoping to wrap up this process in 2 years. We're now more than 3 years out, and I think there's a lot of factors involved in that. But basically, we have been trying to be responsive to community members who have asked for additional time, and we've been trying to accommodate that in good faith. And when we see community members are actively in good faith trying to provide constructive engagement and they just need a little more time, we've tried to be responsive in giving that to them. And so for those reasons, in light of all the other things going on, such as COVID, that's complicated, a community dialogue, we thought it was warranted to grant a little more time. And this is happening on all of our projects in the city, particularly those that have community engagement aspects to them. So that's almost everything we do in community planning and development, and almost everything that goes to planning board. And because of that, a lot of our planning board agendas are getting quite full. And so that's another reason why just the timing issue is a little different than the last time we talked about it. And then with your other point about heights and transit corridors, you are right in that it's been standard planning practice for a long time, basically a best practice throughout the world to focus more housing along quality high capacity transit corridors, right? It's TOD, transit oriented development. That's been a practice and a policy in Denver and in other cities around the world. For good reason. There's a lot of smart growth, environmental benefits to that with regards to pollution, and also just benefits for residents to be able to easily access those quality transit services. But you are right that we took a different approach in the East area than we normally would do along a high capacity transit corridor, in that we are not automatically increasing density or automatically allowing more housing along the transit corridor as we normally would. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is that we have seen sort of what I would characterize as a market failure in terms of the market providing the levels of affordability that the community needs. And so to try to create the incentives to address that market failure and provide more affordable housing, especially along transit, because we know that people at the lower levels of income are those that have a disproportionate benefit from being located near transit, that we thought that was a smart policy along the Colfax corridor. And then secondly, because the zoning that's in place today along Colfax does accommodate the growth more or less. Now that that's the assumption that the properties along Colfax could actually be built out to maximum zoning, which we've done the analysis and shown that because of the barriers, some of them that have been mentioned by Hillary, there's a variety of development barriers, small lots, shallow lots, regulatory challenges, that we actually don't think it's realistic for every property along Colfax to be built out to maximum zoning. So all of these factors were considered in our approach, and we thought that putting the incentives into getting more of the community benefits to address the affordable housing shortage, historic preservation, and other community priorities was the approach that was the right one in this case. So that's where we are with that recommendation.
Kurt, I think the building height strategy is very appropriate for the context we're working in, for the commercial parcel sizes, for the adjacency to single family, for the critical need for affordable housing. for the clustering building heights where we can around transit stops, adding in small scale and adaptive reuse. I think it's a more incremental economic development strategy that is how main streets tend to evolve over time. It's not turbocharged. And as for taking extra time for community involvement, I think you guys have done that extraordinarily well. I think it was very reasonable and appropriate to delay the input period this summer as you did. But it's time to move on because the rest of the world has to move forward, even with a pandemic going on. And we're all making decisions. Businesses are making decisions right now. You know, we can't stop the world and wait for, you know, a vaccine that will take at least 2 years to implement within the general population after it's launched.
Thanks, Hillary. I see Wendy has her hand up. Wendy, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to jump in and hopefully fairly quickly just chime in with both Monica and Hillary on, I think, the need to move forward. And you know, when we were asked to sit on the steering committee, it was already kind of a crisis. We were, you know, 10 years into extraordinary growth in Denver, and the projected growth, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, for Denver in the next 20 years is a 30% growth in population. That's significant. And to me, that is kind of a crisis. And then here we have the pandemic, which adds another layer of urgency, I think. And so to hear you say that you are interested in moving it forward earlier, I'm happy to hear that, because I agree with Monica and Hillary. We need to move on. And then a lot of the, you know, so the implementation part is an opportunity down the process coming soon, if this plan gets passed, for more community involvement. And I hope that many of the people that are now involved in the process are going to be providing some robust community input at those stages where it'll be really appropriate. I mean, this is a values document, a design document, not so much, you know, delving into those kinds of details. So, I mean, I just wanted to say real quickly that 20 years can go really fast, you know, especially as you get older, but it can also really, really drag on. I am now 20 years a neighbor a block away from 9th and Colorado, which is still yet to be built out. So I just want to remind people that it doesn't happen quickly. It takes some time. So I just want to encourage us. My recommendation would be to move on with the plan. So I'll let it go there. And if we want to come back and have some more details on those two answers that you wanted addressed, I will, but I'll let other steering committee people jump in right now.
Looks like
Thanks, Wendy.
Mina.
Mina has hand up.
All right, this is Nina. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm actually out camping and I'm surprised I have a service right now. So hopefully everybody can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. So I have more of a statement. My big concern has always been income inequality and segregation. And I just really feel that we need to, as a culture in our East area neighborhoods, we need to normalize living together with people of different incomes and backgrounds. I do. It's a very good thing. It's wonderful. My family loves it. It's good for the economy in our society. It's good for climate. It's good for social change, especially now with the heightened crisis. Everybody really just needs to open their minds and their souls to be more open to change in society. I really believe that a mixed variety of housing and transit is so critical, especially now, even more than before. And we really need the city government, we need the state government to do everything it can now, sooner rather than later, to get businesses, transit, and housing, just to get it going and get it going strongly to improve things. I concur with Hillary and Monica and Wendy and Merritt. There's already a lot of empty storefronts on Colfax. There were before the pandemic, and I think that it's increasing now. So I really think that there's an urgency there for the city government to help us. And also, even with my own neighbors, we've already seen displacement, and there's displacement with our kind of our boom over the last 10 years, but increasing income inequality. And then with the pandemic, we've got a lot of people who were displaced or are at very near risk of being displaced. So I feel very urgent, and I just want to implore the city government to do everything they can to encourage strength. So sorry if I was rambling a little bit, but those are just kind of the thoughts off the top of my head.
Thanks, Mina.
Great.
Marty has her hand up.
I just add my voice to the fact that if we thought we had a housing crisis before, our housing crisis has just been intensified. And so I concur.
Thanks, Marty.
Okay, I think that's everyone that had a hand up. Does anyone else on the committee have feedback they'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm concerned about the displacement, and if we're going citywide with the missing middle and the low cost or low income housing, that it doesn't displace people in East Colfax. It doesn't allow the displacement of people in East Colfax because we're having other developments put in other parts of the city. And I agree that there's a lot of trouble with people are going to lose their homes or their apartments just because of this COVID thing. And that's all.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I think that's definitely the priority and the outcome, especially for East Colfax, where that's a heightened area of vulnerability for involuntary displacement. So we do have a variety of recommendations and policies of how we might move forward with addressing involuntary displacement. Liz, I don't know if you want to add anything recent to some of those details on that.
I don't know if I have anything specific, but I think we've continued to work with East Colfax stakeholders to really strengthen those recommendations. And if you take a look at that East Colfax chapter, we worked hard to make that the priority, and just the priority generally in the plan. That's really emphasized as making sure that we have those strategies and we're connecting our residents with them. With having a large immigrant and refugee population, it's important to be addressing things like language barriers and really bringing those services and connections to people. and completely agree on the urgency of it all.
You know, my experience in 25 years of community development and planning is when you reach a place where, you know, everybody's not entirely happy with the plan, that everybody gets much of what they want, but not all of what they want, that means that interests have been balanced. And that means there's been some necessary give and take in the community. And so I'm comfortable with the discomfort right now, because I think I actually think that's a good sign in terms of where we are in this planning process.
I agree with you, Hillary. I think that's very well put.
Okay, any other feedback from the community members before we move on to next steps?
And we just want to make sure we leave time if there's anybody else on the call who wants to say any comments as well.
Okay, Liz, do you want to, I think we have one more slide on next steps.
Sure, I'll share that and then we can.
Yeah, then we still have time for, we do have some non-committee members who have joined the call, so we can have some time to allow them to provide comments as well. But we can finish the formal part of the meeting first.
Okay, can you hear me? If I'm muted, okay. So I think we mentioned all of this at the beginning, but sort of the next steps and schedule. We do, we had some discussion tonight, but if you have additional questions or suggested changes, we really encourage you to reach out to us in the next couple of weeks as we're updating the plan draft. You know, if there's something that's still bothering you about the draft or something you heard tonight that you want to see that we address, please do reach out to us. And then we're working towards having an updated plan draft in late August. And we do intend to have another virtual community open house to kind of speak to what's been updated in the plan and allow community members to give their feedback. And that would be in early September. And then that's working towards a final steering committee meeting in mid-September. I will send some dates out to everybody for that meeting to see your availability. But really the purpose of this meeting is to provide a recommendation for planning board and city council. And if there are things that you, and we'll remind you ahead of this, that you still with that updated draft would like to see change and you want the steering committee to consider that, we're going to ask you to send us that ahead of time so that we know what those topics are that we want to discuss as a committee and potentially incorporate those into the recommendation so that you're recommending moving forward, but potentially with some changes. And then that will move forward from there to planning board and city council hearings in October and November. And you've probably seen these emails from me and reminders, but we are available still to meet, do phone calls with organizations and community members as requested. So if your organization would like to meet with us, just reach out. We're happy to do that and happy to help with the virtual component too, if that's not something your organization is already doing. So we'll stop with the slides and then we can go back to the discussion.
Just real quickly on this, I want to put a point of emphasis for the committee on that top bullet in bold. That's really important because we have one more meeting and that one more meeting will be asking for your recommendation. And so if there's anything that you would like to see changed before that final meeting, we really need to know about it so we're prepared to look at that and discuss it and have it ready for a committee discussion at that last meeting. We want to have that last meeting to be very constructive, and so please, if you have anything that you need clarification on that you don't quite fully understand at this point, or if there are some details and suggested changes, please reach out to Liz and or myself on those over the next couple of weeks.
I had a question then. So you're going to update the plan and release it in late August, but in mid-August we need to get our issues to you. But it sounds like you're still receiving input from other groups. So how do we know what changes are being negotiated? I don't know. I guess, is the plan draft that we see now the one that we have to give comments on, or the future one with the changes you're going to be making?
It's probably both, I would say, right? We want, and I know a number of you have already sent comments, so believe me, we're reviewing all of those, so we are aware of that. But if you have, like, you didn't bring up tonight, or there's something that you know that you would want us to address as soon as possible in that updated draft, then let us know ahead of time. And we will put out that updated draft. We'll be very specific about changes, like very highlight where we've made changes. We'll have the response to the comments received. And with that knowledge of that draft, you can still have additional suggestions for that September meeting, if that makes sense.
I get your point, Monica. So I guess the bigger issue with that is not necessarily by mid-August, right? So if there's something, basically it's before the meeting, right? But before that final steering committee meeting, make sure to reach out. Obviously, the sooner the better. But if there are some changes from the first draft to the second draft, and that's the thing that you're concerned about or have questions on, obviously you can provide those at any time, hopefully before the meeting.
Okay, so let me just, thank you for that clarification. So we'll get your comments on this draft, and then you're releasing another draft. And then if we have, you'll highlight the changes from this draft to the next. And then if we have questions, let you know. And then I'm hoping we're not going to get anything surprising, right? I mean, deviations between this draft and the next should be very minor because of the timeline. Let me just, I guess you don't have to answer that per se, but as a steering committee member, I really hope I'm not like surprised by draft number 2.
Well, I think what we tried to share tonight were the things that we're hearing, and I think a lot of them are things that we've heard throughout this process. There's definitely recommendations on clarity and making like that we've received. So there might be multiple minor changes, but we tried to highlight where we're hearing the major comments, and a lot of them are themes we've heard throughout. But we will be very clear because we know it's a big document on where we make the changes so that you're not necessarily having to reread everything, but here on this page is where we made an update. Any other questions on this? Okay, and I'll certainly send the steering committee an email with this information as well too. Okay. Okay, were there any further steering committee comments before I or check with the attendees if there's anybody that would like to speak?
I would just like to quickly say thank you, everybody holding it together for 3 years.
Yes, thank you all. I know this is much longer of a commitment than we originally asked for. I think we said 18 months to 2 years originally, so it's double that short time frame. So we really appreciate all of your work. So let me see if I can.
It's like a typical remodel project. Always
Yes.
longer.
I'm trying to get the participant list up.
much, twice as much.
Be done in 6 weeks.
And then just for, I think as Liz, I think she's working on making it available to allow non-committee members to chime in, but there are a few comments that have been provided in the Q&A. For any members of the public, we are taking all the comments that you put in the Q&A and incorporating them into all of the comments that we received on the plan so far, and so they will be responded to when we put out the second draft.
Okay, Kurt, are you able to get all the attendees when you press view all attendees? All right, it's not opening for me at the moment, so I'm trying to.
Let me see here.
I might change you to host so you could unmute people. I have it.
Yeah, I can see the attendee list.
Okay, let me see if I can.
Were we supposed to see these comments? Because I don't see any of them on mine.
They're in the, if you open the Q&A, there's questions, and if I didn't, I tried to answer some of them while the discussion was going on, but if I didn't get to yours, I will certainly follow up afterwards, but let's see if I can.
I see them now.
Kurt, I'm making you the host. Did you get that notice?
No.
Hmm.
I think try rolling maybe the.
Yeah, it shows it on my side, but. Computer's not happy with me at the moment. Hold on.
Well, I think what we can do is just we can stay on here a couple more minutes and have any members of the public who want to provide some input the opportunity to just type it into the Q&A, and we'll make sure that those comments are recorded and responded to, because we are at 7:30. So.
Yeah, and I apologize. I don't know why I'm losing functionality on my computer. Do you see Q&A coming up while I'm? Steering committee members have more to say in the meantime. Go for it while I'm trying to get this to work. Oh, okay. I got it to work, but maybe I'll just go through individually and see if there's anybody. We probably don't have a whole lot of time to respond to questions, but if people want to say anything, feel free to do so. So I'll start with Steve Harrington. Oh. I don't know why it's making that sound. Okay. Did Joel have anything that you wanted to add?
Hi, this is Joel Noble, Chair of the Denver Planning Board. I've just been observing, and thank you all for your long and dedicated service to this. I've served in a similar role on area plans in my neighborhood in the past. And I know it's a big responsibility to not only participate in the conversations, but also to keep your neighbors informed about what's going on and plugged in so that they know when the opportunities are to comment and when the drafts are out and so forth. So thank you for your service.
Thanks, Joel. John Sawyer, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I just wrote my question to Kurt,
Okay.
so it might be easier just to put it in the Q&A.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure that we get to all of those.
Okay, so I see it, John. Thanks for the question. Can you, I think your question is, can you clarify what you said about adjacent residential zoning adjacent to the Colfax corridor and any changes being contemplated? And so the only changes that are recommended adjacent to the Colfax corridor is what we're calling the missing middle housing options. And so that's the recommendation to integrate in additional housing options into neighborhoods. And so that would be like converting a single unit dwelling into a 2-unit dwelling. And that recommendation is recommended not necessarily for every property in single unit areas, but as a sort of sprinkling in integration in locations where we think it makes sense. So if there's lots that meet certain criteria, whether they're adjacent to a commercial use or let's say adjacent to some other more intensive use or infrastructure, that those types of factors will be considered in this regulatory process for how we go about amending the zoning code to encourage some additional housing options in those neighborhoods.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'm going to go to someone who has their name as Hale, but if you could introduce who you are and if you had any comments.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Hi, Liz. This is Jean. Hi. You, of course, we have many questions. Let me start off with, because I don't want to take up everyone's time. When you're talking about anti-displacement policies, you are speaking about anti-displacement throughout the entire East area.
Correct.
Okay, that would be the first question, because I think it was very unclear. It seemed like it was only going to apply to the East Colfax area. The second thing is I would like to see more definitions about the anti-displacement policy. And have you been speaking to experts, and who are they that are giving you or helping you, assisting you in making sure that those are really strong?
No, that's great feedback. Throughout this process, we have had our partners in our other city agencies. So in our housing department, in our neighborhood and equity and stabilization department, in addition to having a housing consultant as part of our team. And we did host housing focus groups where we invited affordable housing developers and other affordable housing professionals to be a part of that discussion. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that's an ongoing effort throughout the city to make sure that we've got the best strategies to help address this issue.
Especially, I know we've heard a lot from the business side in the East area. I think there's going to be a huge concern. The impact of COVID is all the way across the board. And there are going to be many people who are going to have a very difficult time in managing their mortgages. So yes, there's a concern for not only businesses, but for the residents as well. So obviously you all know that because you all carry mortgages as well. There are many other questions, and we are going to try to meet with you within the next 2 weeks. But I think that anti-displacement policy, given what everyone is saying on the phone call today, it's really critical that we get the experts involved on that. The other thing is about, I know we have a lot of conversations about affordable housing. We'll continue to have that conversation. And I know that citywide, they're trying to do something. As you know, we have always been in favor of overturning Telluride at the state level. We have said that since October, that truly this height issue, we've built 45,000 units in the last 3 years. As far as we can tell from the data, and you all would know this data, but from the newspaper clippings, it seems like we have had or are trying to build, have had to try to retain or try to build in the last 2 years or 3 years, 2,000 units. That we are not good. The model is not working. So clearly we really have to do something at the state level. And I just want to emphasize that to everyone on the phone, that if you're mistaken to think that Denver East Neighborhoods First does not want affordability, we've been the ones who said, make it clear what affordability. We just don't want it the 80%. We want the very lowest level, some type of stratification. And you and I have talked about that. Doesn't necessarily mean that's been communicated to the rest of the committee members. So I did want to say that tonight, that everyone is concerned about affordability and our homelessness issue. It is a citywide problem. We have to deal with these issues. But what's not clear to us is, can we really deal with it? Because we've had this linkage fee for the last 3 years. It's not working. We really think that Telluride is the answer, along with other tools, but Telluride is really going to help drive that. So you and I can talk more, but I just want to say that for people at large who have not necessarily had the face-to-face contact with Denver East. So thanks, Kurt and Liz.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Can I just jump in with a clarification?
Sure.
So I think businesses have been involved, obviously, because we have a lot of small businesses along, especially the Colfax corridor, and one of the inputs from the community when we first started this process was that they wanted to make sure that these small businesses were kept in the neighborhood and strengthened. Losing my voice. And part of the reason for that is that many of the owners of these businesses and the people who work for these businesses live in this community. So it's like, when you pull a string, you find that it's attached to everything else in the universe in a sense. So that's one of the reasons why the businesses along Colfax have been involved in the process through the bid and, and the fax partnership. So sorry, losing my voice. That's it.
Thanks, Wendy. Gonna go to John Fernandez. Hi, John.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep. You just introduce yourself?
Oh, yes. I'm a resident of the East Colfax neighborhood and also on the fax board. So maybe 3 quick points or questions. I know it's late. One, in terms of process, the East Colfax Neighborhood Association voted to essentially for an indefinite delay on adoption process for the East Area Plan. So can we conclude from your description of the process that you're moving ahead despite that vote? That's something I would encourage, but I just want to make a clarification that their call for delay won't have an effect on the adoption process. Hello?
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kurt.
That's correct, John. We are continuing to meet with East Colfax residents. We've had a couple of meetings over the past couple of weeks who still want to provide input, but we are not in agreement to sort of indefinitely delay this process. So yes, we are moving forward.
All right, that sounds good. Second point, a minor one, but given the news about Johnson & Wales, I think it would behoove the city to contact Johnson & Wales or the property owner, I don't know who that is, to at least have a preliminary discussion about what their thoughts and plans are. It would seem odd that we would be adopting a plan for the neighborhood with just a big question mark there. And I know that their development plans might be years in the offing, I don't know, but at least do a little bit of due diligence to find out what you can about their plans. I think that would be very helpful. Then the third thing, the fax partnership sent you a letter strongly supporting moving ahead with the plan and adoption and so forth. But we also suggested that the plan is unwieldy the way it's currently structured. And listening to the discussion tonight just reinforced that impression to me. You talk about a variety of citywide projects that are going to be going off on a tangent, so to speak, based on related to goals in the East Area Plan. And it would sure help me as a citizen to be able to look at an action plan that's part of the East Area Plan that would describe a timeline and responsibilities and regarding those spin-off projects. In other words, will we adopt a policy of no net loss for affordable housing? And what other city project is that related to? Hillary mentioned the adaptive reuse of commercial buildings. What's the timeline, for that? It seems to me that for some transparency and for some basic information to the citizens to be able to have an action plan, an implementation plan that has timelines and responsibilities would be very helpful. That's it. Thanks.
That's good feedback, John. We are reaching out to Johnston Wales to try to get more detail on their plans. That's certainly on our radar. We agree that that's good for us to know, and also to communicate the discussions that we've been having through
Good.
this plan.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to David Craig, if you had any comments. Are you there, David? Okay, we'll move on then to Wendy Herring. You're there and wanted to add any comments? Wendy, are you there? Okay, we'll go there. See Joyanne from Councilwoman Sawyer's office is here. Did you want to say anything, Joyanne? Thanks for joining us. Sorry to surprise you. I'm trying to go down to attendees.
Actually, wait. I'm unmuted, right?
Yes, we hear you.
Yep.
I was frantically trying to unlock my phone as you talked. Actually, the councilwoman tuned into this call just a little bit ago, so I will defer to her if she is still on the call.
Oh, she might. I have one that's.
She had to call in.
Okay. Councilwoman Sawyer, you might be showing up as a call-in user. Are you? I just unmuted you.
I had to call in.
Thank you for joining us.
Hi, all.
Did you?
Yeah, sorry, there was a council listening session 6 to 7. So when I tried to sign in on my computer at 7, it just gave me the circle of death and didn't let me sign in. So I had to call in. But
I'm sorry about that.
No problem at all. I just wanted to make sure that I was listening in. I don't have any comments. I just wanted to make sure that I was, present and hearing what everyone else had to say. So thanks, everyone. Thanks to the steering committee for all of your hard work. And I'm really glad that I got to hear some of the comments. I apologize I couldn't be here for the whole meeting. And Liz and Kurt, thanks to you guys for all of your hard work. Everyone else who was able to call in and who is providing feedback now, thanks to all of you. And I will be quiet and just listen. So thanks so much.
Hi, thank you again for joining us and all your support through this process. There's just a couple more on here that I have. Shane Sutherland. Did you have any comments you wanted to share? I'll be surprising people with some of these as I go through their names.
Yeah, I don't really have any comments.
Okay, thank you for joining us tonight. Roger is with the city. Roger, did you have anything? Roger's with our Nest team. He's probably listening in tonight.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Liz. I yield to the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, one more here. A user that's named JB. Did you have any comments you wanted to add? If you could introduce yourself. Okay, don't hear anything. And I know JB has added some questions into the chat, so we'll make sure that we get to those. I'm just going to try one more time for Steve. No. Sorry, Steve, your audio doesn't seem to be working on our end, but if you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat, or you can reach out to us as well. Okay, I think we got through everybody. Were there any closing comments from any of the steering committee members?
Just thank you again for everybody participating over the last 3 years. And I know we have a tough task to get this finalized, and I appreciate your efforts.
Okay, well, thank you to everybody again, and please reach out to us if you have additional questions, comments. Thanks for all your dedication to this process, and we look forward to sharing the next draft with you.
Bye, everyone. Stay healthy.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye, good night. Thanks, Kurt and Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.